Just over a month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become vice president of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Hi everyone, buckle up for the one and only vice presidential debate of the year. Exciting times when the seconds in charge, the number twos, get to battle it out in the arena of ideas, primarily to defend their corresponding head honchos, Badass Supreme and Comrade Harris. A formidable task for either of them, no doubt. Also, this is quite possibly the last debate we're gonna have before the elections. Oh, and Luigi will be joining us shortly. So without further ado, let's get straight to it.
Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
First topic.
We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Wow, what a first question. We're coming in hot with the Middle East on the precipice of total war. Governor Walz, will you preemptively bomb the shit out of Iran 'cause Madman Bibi asked you to? Or are you a chicken shit bleeding heart liberal who will let the Ayatollah rape our newborns? Huh, Governor Walz? Huh? Which is it? Look, we're skipping the Middle East. American media is simply incapable of presenting this issue with even an iota of fairness. All they want to do is warmonger about Iran, whatever, nothing we haven't seen before. Walz doesn't really answer the question, of course, because why would you even answer this stupid fucking question, which, by the way, answering in the affirmative will probably induce Netanyahu to act in an even more warmongering way than he's been acting, if that's even possible. Vance does give an answer when he manages to get to it.
Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
I'll take that as a yes. I'll bomb the shit out of Iran if whatever embassy they've elected in Israel thinks it's a good idea. Great start.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been.
Yes, JD, that's how cause and effect works. The Kremlin, who chose you as VP, unilaterally abandoned the fucking nuclear deal, which placed restrictions and monitored Iran's nuclear development so that it may only be used for civilian purposes. And lo and behold, as a result, Iran is now closer than ever to developing military-grade nuclear weapons. Wow, who could have guessed? Next topic.
Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable.
No, let's get to the climate change.
Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water.
Clean air, clean water, but no clean energy. Energy, you gotta have it dirty. I wonder, will anyone ever ask either of the two doofuses, whatever the fuck that means exactly? Clean air, clean water. Sounds like something an oil baron would say in the last century. Let's go to Walz.
Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing.
That is what they're doing. That's literally what the CHIPS Act and the infrastructure bills were. Next topic.
We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work?
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country.
See what the sniveling weasel did there? As if the fentanyl is entrusted to desperate migrants trying to cross the border illegally. They always do this. They constantly conflate these two separate issues. And at this point, everyone just goes along with the stupidity as if most drugs aren't fucking smuggled through legal ports of entry, stashed between other fucking goods that are being transported between the two countries anyway.
So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country.
What the fuck did this cretin just say? Yeah, man, I'm sure people will go home if they get paid more than before. They'll be like, what the fuck? You're paying me too much money. I'm going home.
That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall. and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime.
3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation.
Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
You disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help.
Wait, I thought we had to build the wall? Finish the wall? What?
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn now to the economy. Thank you.
Margaret, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process.
At least we now know that unless you've waited 10 years for a green card, Vance thinks you're illegal. Next topic.
The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by a third. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Okay, Vance.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good.
Which parts, Vance? I thought Kamala's policies were radical communist, fascist, socialist policies. Which part of the communist, radical, socialist, fascist policy did you like, Vance?
Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now.
Look, we need to hurry this up, otherwise we're never gonna end. Next topic.
Governor, you say trust the experts, but those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And
look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. This is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business. But those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Good answer, Vance.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do.
Look, this is definitely the right approach by JD. What kind of grown-ass man is called JD? Look, this is definitely the right approach by Vance on this issue. It's clear the Republicans have lost the majority of the female vote with their draconian anti-abortion fetish. And of course, dialing that down is the right way to go for a general election. Thing is, I don't believe them on anything regarding abortion or reproductive rights or women's rights, and I don't believe Vance's words here either. He's saying the right words though, definitely. And can I just say that at this point it's become clear that Vance is attempting and succeeding, I believe, to present a softer, more cordial image here in the VP debate. I certainly prefer softer, more fucking human Vance. I bet the general populace will as well. A softer VP, I think, pairs much better with a loudmouth like Trump at the top of the ticket, just like it worked well with Mike Pence. Rest in peace, Mike. So, next topic.
The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography?
But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back.
But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business.
We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago.
Senor Vance, what the fuck you talking about, senor? Everybody knows the long-standing arrangement between the US and Mexico has been guns south, drugs north. And you are telling me it's the other way around? Stop with the border fetish, Vance.
But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger.
We have to set up those bear traps, disguise some bottomless pits, a few dead ends, a labyrinth, and those logs that smack you in Bloodborne. Only then will our children be secure.
I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is, talking about cities and where it's at, the number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns.
Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. First, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in. And we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable.
Well, to be honest, Comrade Harris is the VP, not the president. She doesn't have final authority on any issue. Or rather, she has as much final authority as Biden allows her. Anyway, moving on.
Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not
migrants
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this.
One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more?
Spoiler alert, he can't and he won't. Walz, meanwhile, wants to strengthen the ACA. Also, the Republicans now defend Obamacare, even though it was dying John McCain that literally stopped them from repealing it. Now they've preserved Obamacare and want kudos for that. How the turns have tabled.
I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation.
Yes, Vance, but you wouldn't tell an audience of at least 67 million people that you don't even have a fucking plan. Nobody said you had to go through the fucking plan in 60 seconds or less. He is, I will admit, very slick.
I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and health care costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care.
And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is... So you think the
individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that.
So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Look, the problem with this plan is that you shouldn't be implementing tariffs on imports to generate government revenue. You place those to protect the industries you want to protect, and you might even be willing to take the inflationary hit for that. But you don't do it to raise money to spend elsewhere. You want money to fund childcare? Tax the rich, Vance. Anyway, final topic, almost done, people.
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation.
Then why did we leave this fucking question for last when almost everybody tunes out, Nora? What the fuck, Nora?
Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House.
And I think there's a lot of agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk.
You remember how we did it last time, so I want you on the analysis, Luigi, and I want your opinion on the debate that we just witnessed.
Okay, let's analyze what happened at that debate.
On a general level, where we can get into more specific
On
topics.
a general level, I think neither of them is a good debater, but I think Vance, like on a debate, like on a mannerisms and confidence level, energy, let's put it that way, he came out on top. And that apparently is the view of Politico that has gathered a few reporters and asked their opinion. 5 out of 6 said that Vance won the debate. Now, we can discuss whether he really won it, but how did you find it on a
couple of points, a couple of points on that. One of them is that Vance has had a lot more practice, which we haven't reported on, but yeah, Vance has been having press conferences, going on the media constantly, and I mean CNN, MSNBC, anywhere. Vance has been anywhere taking questions. So he's had more practice. As you and I both know, Luigi, Walz has only been having rallies mainly. Yeah. He hasn't faced any questions. So, I mean, there's practice. And another point on that is the expectations with Vance. Where were they? Mine were certainly lower. So there's that as well. When you overperform expectations, definitely looks better. And on the final point, I think it was a wash. I think it was a wash. But I'm going to be honest, the first time I watched the debate, it was like 50-50, whatever. Definitely Vance came out. I mean, I had Vance in my mind's eye as the lowest of the filth. the kind of scum you find on the bottom of the barrel. and he definitely performed far better than that. He seemed halfway reasonable on a lot of points. Now, because I know the specifics of them, I can tell when he's lying or not, as I've analyzed through it. But yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
To the average person, it was, as I said, soft Vance. Soft
Bingo.
Vance.
And Walz, I felt, was being a little too nice. Like, dude, you came to debate. Like, you don't have to try to agree with the Republican on every point. Like,
Yeah, they were both nice, Luigi. Vance kept going on and on about, I think some of his points are good. I don't agree with some other points. I mean, it was unprecedented, right?
Let's break
This
it
level
down.
of civility. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, much
What
better
the
than
fuck?
we're used to seeing. It's a debate that doesn't include Donald Trump. Automatically, it's going to be more civilized.
Lame,
But-
Donald. Get your ass on the debate stage. We need some fireworks, baby.
So let's break it subject by subject, rather.
Tell me whichever
found-
one you want, yeah.
I found that Walz was really solid on abortion and on guns. Like on guns especially, I feel was Walz's best moment of the night. Like Walz baited Vance into praising Finland on guns. So basically Walz said something like, I've been to Finland. They also have a high percentage of gun ownership, but schools function normally. They don't have school shootings, for example. Basically got Vance to basically blame mental health disorder in the US about like the difference with Finland on guns, and he Walz smacked him back with, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you are violent. Sometimes it's just the guns.
Yeah.
And Vance was agreeing with body language to that, which is insane. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I thought healthcare as well. Definitely, Walz had the upper hand. I think you're going to say, I mean, at the end as well, right at the end. I don't know how many people reached the end. But when he refused 100%. But when he refused to admit that Donny Boy lost the election, one of the biggest points, by the way, of the debate, because as we said on the very first episode where we introduced Vance, and as I think Walz said himself during the debate, that's the reason Vance is standing there right now, because unlike Mike Pence, he would have fucking stolen the election for Donald.
Because he likes to eat Donald Trump's ass on a regular basis.
Or at least that's what he's claiming now. We still haven't seen, the hour. We haven't seen the man in the hour, how he's going to respond. But yeah, that's the assumption, right? That was Donald's assumption in picking this guy.
Yeah, Vance has said it. He said he wouldn't have certified the election if he was in Mike Pence's shoes. Major reason he's there. The guy used to call Trump Hitler like 8 years ago, and suddenly he is a running mate, right? So,
and I thought, I commented on that already, but the whole shit was democracy, which is one of the highest polling issues of concern to voters. Well, why did you leave the fucking question for last? CBS, what was it? CBS. Yeah. Why did you leave it for last? And also, the first question, fucking ridiculous. We're gonna go with the Middle East in a little bit, but yeah.
It was about would you support Israel in a preemptive first strike?
Yeah, it was like bomb him. Would you bomb him?
What the fuck basically the question translated is, do you give Israel a blank state to do whatever the fuck they want if they feel threatened? Which there's international laws about that, and it's
ridiculous, Luigi. And I think you're gonna say maybe that Vance had the upper hand on immigration.
Yeah, although Walz did hit him back with the fact that Donald Trump buried the only bill that would have actually done something about that. But what I found, I don't think Vance had any great moments, but Walz had a bad moment. That was about Tiananmen Square, where basically the reporters played a gotcha question with, you said you were there.
He was a bit liberal, It was like, I don't remember, it was like March and he went in July or something like that. Yeah. And the reporter stressed him on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he didn't have a solid answer. He was like, I misspoke, and, that's the end of that.
As you said, Luigi, I said it was a wash. I'm going to take it. A lot of polls basically came out with 42% of the debate surveyed said that Vance won, while 41% thought the Walz emerged as the winner, and 17% called the debate a tie. I would actually agree with the 17%, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, on a policy level, Walz was
Oh,
better.
but if you take the performance in as well,
Exactly.
and the whole package. So, I mean, a far more reasonable debate than when used to, Luigi. Would you agree?
Much different. I wish they had a second one because
Oh, yeah.
this is actually worth watching instead of the Trump debates where I just go on about bullshit, George.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating them. Anyway, yeah. Should we, Luigi, before, I mean, as I've alluded to at the start of the debate, with the situation in the Middle East on the brink of fucking total war at this point.
Wait. I can do this. Speaking of giving Israel a blank slate,
Let me just run through the latest developments that have occurred the past, I don't know, 6 days since we've released an episode. We had Netanyahu going to the UN. There were calls for a ceasefire. And Netanyahu, basically, to summarize quickly at the UN, was basically like, you bitches, I wasn't even gonna come here, but then I heard what kind of shit you were slinging about me, so I came here to piss on your fucking faces. Following that, they killed the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, by leveling a fucking apartment building in Beirut, which, Luigi, if I may, about this, I mean, personally, you can kill an enemy combatant any day of the week.
it's human shields, George. It's
but
just human shields.
When you level a fucking apartment building, and I saw some comments, Luigi, by the German foreign minister and the Americans, of course, who was like, oh, it's justified. What the fuck, sons of bitches? Can you imagine if apartment buildings in Berlin were being fucking leveled because a terrorist was there? Or
Look,
London?
For the leader of Hezbollah, I can understand that response, but let's be real, they've done it to like countless buildings that did not include the head of Hezbollah as well.
Oh, I condemned all of the times they did it. 100% they did it before. Yeah. But I mean, can you imagine, Luigi, the parallel response if this has happened in fucking London or New York?
It would be unheard of. Yeah.
No, not New York. Not New York. New York is weird. Let's do the other ones. Yeah, can you imagine if this has happened in Berlin or London? It's a crime, dude. It's just like the pagers. I mean, cool James Bond shit. Fuck yeah, no time to die, whatever. But I mean, you've killed accidentally, whatever. You've killed children in this attack.
You only live twice, George.
You only live twice.
Yeah.
And Luigi, in tandem with taking out, I don't know, all of the Hezbollah military leadership and a bunch of the civilian as well. They also started a limited, what they've termed a limited ground operation targeting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And let me remind folks that they occupied southern Lebanon for 18 years in the past after one of those limited ground operation attempts. So this is not good, man.
I love the framing of language. Like George Carlin would have had like a party with this. It's basically a war in everything but name. We're bombing each other, like we're killing each other on streets, but no, it's a limited, isn't a limited operation what Putin called his invasion of Ukraine.
They all call them, exactly, Luigi. They literally all call them a limited operation, and they're potentially anything bad. I mean, I think I've read, Luigi, that about 2,000 Lebanese people have died. Started raiding Lebanese villages on the southern border. We didn't get Iran retaliated by launching missiles at Israel. Got some footage as well.
The crazy part about all this is that this has been everything that you just mentioned has happened the last 6 days since we had our latest episode.
Yeah. And I mean, Luigi, I've said, Israel and the United States immediately came out with, no, they didn't hit anything. It was a total failure. I don't know, dude. As you can see in the footage, you can see the missiles, multiple of them, clearly striking an indicated determined location. It doesn't seem like they're being felled one by one by anti-aircraft. I don't know, dude. It seems that they've hit stuff, is what I'm saying. Obviously, no casualties, but it was a major event, wasn't it? But these rockets apparently reached in 12 minutes from Iran.
Mhm.
Cruise
And
miss.
sorry, George, there is a
Yeah,
high probability that Iran actually notified them
yeah.
through like indirect parties, like
I
notified
think
the
through
Americans.
Russia, possibly.
Yeah, or Russia.
Luigi.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They told Russia. Yeah,
Possibly
so
they told the Americans, who knows? But I mean, the Americans came out about a couple of hours before the attack, sounding the alarm. And after that, Biden reaffirmed his support for Israel. So where does that lead us, Luigi?
it leads us in the fact that Iran, once again, like Iran played the same move they did a month ago or more, when they just launched several missiles, not really trying to hit anything, just showing that I've got the missiles to hit you
Yeah.
anytime I want.
So
Yeah.
I mean, the issue is that Bibi is never, I mean, they've invaded Lebanon at this point, and who knows when that will ever end.
100%.
So I don't see an alley to de-escalation at this point. I don't see any off-ramp anywhere because Bibi seems like determined, Luigi, and it seems, honestly, at this point, I don't think I've said this before, but it seems to me that beyond Trump or Kamala, Bibi is so much more pleased that he's got Biden right now. And that's what he's making hay out of instead of, I don't think at this point, I think even Trump potentially could be better than Biden on Israel.
no.
Yeah, possibly
Like,
no. Yeah.
Trump would be the most hawkish ever. Like Trump would be cheering these strikes instead
Oh,
of like,
yeah. What am I saying? Jesus Christ. I was thinking about the Palestinians in terms of, Trump, as concerns Iran, is extremely volatile. Yeah.
very
Which
hawkish.
is, this would be extremely problematic.
Biden was asked if he would allow Israel to strike, if he would allow the Israelis to strike Iranian oil facilities, and he basically said something, well, we're discussing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Trump would have sanctioned the strike already, right?
Yeah.
The Middle East is ungluing right now.
Yeah.
Don't even know if that's a word, but
Have I got anything from Biden? Look at him. A man on the run. He's discussing possible Israeli strikes on Iran oil facilities. Did you see this?
that's exactly what I was discussing, yeah.
The idiot said that, and in response, fucking oil prices spiked.
The Iranians don't want to get involved in this.
Thankfully.
This is the sense you are getting, by the way.
What about Bibi?
Bibi wants to get them involved, and I wouldn't even exclude a false flag operation at this point.
Who's the aggressor here, honestly? Ask yourself this, watchers.
This is what escalation literally looks like. In the previous episode, we were discussing whether they would put boots on the ground. We're there. This is a war. I mean, don't buy the limited operation bullshit. But an important distinction I wanted to draw is that Hezbollah is not the Lebanese army. The Lebanese army has actually not been participating in all of this.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether the Lebanese army is simply symbolic.
I mean, it's much less strong. It's much weaker than Hezbollah, as far as I understand. And I think that the Lebanese, some Lebanese, I don't know if it's the prime minister, whoever it was, but high up, came out with at the United Nations, and he said that they're going to beef up the army so that they can control the southern border and actually enforce that goddamn treaty, so that Hezbollah is not there and Israel can use that as an excuse. Or, they don't fire rockets into Israel, so Israel doesn't have to invade Lebanon, whatever.
That would be great. That would also be great.
Yeah, I don't know how far the Lebanese state is capable of doing this. It's a very complicated affair because you've got Hezbollah is a part of Lebanon. I mean, I think they've got the domestic and the foreign ministry. They've got very close control of the country, but not complete.
I was going to say, I think they control pretty much everything.
Yeah, but there is, as you said, the Lebanese army, which is not Hezbollah. And that army pulled back. They're not the ones fighting the Israeli army right now above the southern border, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So,
and more than 1 million people have been
displaced.
Have lost. Yeah.
And it's likely to get worse, I guess, because Israel is calling for evacuations still.
Yeah.
Which
good
brings
news.
hopefully
Good
rings
news all
hopefully.
around. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, the good news keeps on piling up, George. It's been so fun.
And with the coming election of the golden one, we're set for life, Luigi.
All right, let's hope the world looks a little bit better by this time next week, George.
Yes.
And maybe leave it there.
A true pleasure, Luigi. A true gentleman and a scholar.
Thank you to everybody for listening. Like, subscribe, all of the good stuff. See you, George.
Bye-bye. See you soon, folks. Bye-bye.